So program revenue and the trends that exist within that. And again, program revenue could be a foundation is supporting you, or corporate partners are, like we heard this morning, or you could be charging for certain things, right? But importantly, what are the trends that are happening there? Corporate sponsors, average deals, recurring. Our first corporate sponsorship at Spring was $2,000 Canadian. 2 years later, we signed a 3-year deal with them for $50,000 per year. So it's an example of, like, it's okay to start small. Get them, like, as you start to build that rapport and relationship and trust, they can grow with you, especially the bigger the corporate. So recurring is really, really important. And then desk revenue or member revenue. So one thing that we found really interesting at Spring is, with all of our workshops, our average revenue per entrepreneur, because some of our workshops are paid and some are free, and our funding program is paid. And so our average revenue was about, lifetime value, about $750 is what we calculated. So if you came to us to an event, we knew that, you know, at $750, that was about the maximum that we could get out of you, right? When we added roundtables, overnight our lifetime value went to $3,000, because it's monthly recurring revenue to be a member in a roundtable. So for us, that was transformative in terms of our cash flow. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, great. So some other metrics specifically under incubation and acceleration. So with some of the metrics that I gave you guys earlier, they were pre-programmed, right? We were talking about applicants, remember the demographic data and everything else, right? So it's interesting to talk about some of the post-program metrics. There's a lot of metrics that you guys can gather, unlimited, right, on your companies. And so for us, and actually somebody this morning said it, Axel said it this morning. One of the things that he focuses on, 10 to 20, right, the number of active companies is survival rate. It is important to note, you guys will decide, and your partners will decide what is important on survival rate. So for example, if you are funded by a foundation or by a government entity, often 10 to 20 is not acceptable. They will want to see 50, 60, 70% survival rate. Because for a government is about making the whole boat float higher, right? So even if a bunch of companies are kind of mediocre, but they're creating 1 job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, like suddenly for them, it's like, look, on aggregate, we created 3,000 jobs, right? So for them, you know, that having a much higher survival rate is important. If you have private funders, like Mike earlier today, Mike could care less about a 20% survival rate. He wants the best, right? You heard him say it himself, right? So your survival rate needs to align to who your funders are and how you guys make money. Cool? Awesome. And then engagement, referrals, online engagement, repeat customers. Spring, we're 4.5 years in, probably about 70% of our customers, so program participants, roundtable members, event attendees, about 70% of those people are referrals now. So our goal right now is actually to increase the percentage of referrals, because we actually get a lot of referrals from our alumni. We get some from our corporate partners, but we get very few from our mentors and investors. So we're actually actively trying to cultivate that. And the reason, of course, if we're trying to get referrals, then marketing is free, right? We don't have to spend any money telling people about us, because they're just being sent to us, right? Does that make sense? Cool. And then results specific, so capital raised, impact, survivability, stories. For us, impact is an important metric. So we're trying to identify specifically how companies are making the world a better place. And the reason for that is because some of our corporate sponsors want that data, right? We care, but our corporate sponsors hold us accountable because they write a check to make sure that we do, right? So this is everything from job training and job creation programs to carbon reductions or diversions to recycling, access to. So when we say access to, it's access to anything that people structurally do not have access to. So it could be access to education, it could be access to a job, it could be access to capital, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, great. Capital raised. This is a funny one. There's two ways you can measure capital raised. So one is the amount of capital that you, in a hands-on way, help people raise. The other one is you track the amount of capital that your company's raised, whether you ever had a hand in it or not. So, for example, there's an incubator actually in Vancouver, and when they show their stats, they say our companies have raised $250 million. Awesome. They don't even have a funding workshop, right? But that's a number that they lay claim to, right? Because they say, hey, we help these companies. And even though we didn't help them directly in capital raising, we believe we can attach our brand to that number. So in our case, because we have a funding program, we only speak about the funding raised through the program, because then it's referenceable, if that makes sense. So it is important to note that it depends on which number you pull, and for what reason. Make sense?